Evening. My mics are obviously live. Hey, how are you? We're returning from an executive session a little bit late. We're going to pick up with a regular meeting of the Hastings and Hudson Board of Education for Tuesday, January 27th. Just give me a moment here.
That's tough. That would be.
And we're going
That's a challenge.
to open up with Dr. McCursey's, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Open up
Yes.
Dr. McCursey's district highlights.
Right. So tonight, in the spirit of keeping things moving, I gave Kara and Melissa D a break. They are the one who assembled the wonderful images and words. We'll be back to that next meeting. But I wanted to be a little old-fashioned and give a substantive update. The board has known that regionalism, work on regionalization has been a priority going back now about probably 2 years, emanating from the commissioner on down through. As I report out to the board, lots of reactions to that across the state. Was it, in my language, no one else, a stalking horse for merging districts? The answer is no, but there was some fear of that. Then sort of concerns about what the extent of work would be required. As it settled down probably about a half year ago, 9 months ago, each of the BOCES, I think there are 24 in the state, was given the charge of bringing together those districts represented by their superintendents who did want to consider different aspects of how to work regionally in a collaborative, cooperative way. And as I had told the board, I agreed to stay in that. Had to sign a document not committing to anything, but that we would stay in it. Not all districts did. So, for example, in the Southern Westchester BOCES catchment area, I think there may be about 15 of us involved, maybe a little larger, but not that much more. And I think, Maureen, how many? There are probably 60 districts in that catchment area. Southern Westchester.
Maybe a little less than 50.
Yeah, so you can get a low ratio. But we've hung in there. And then this last week finally had to commit to what aspect of some options of work, what would we commit to? And I conferred with Alex's board president. If the answer had been no, we're not participating, he said we're going to have to bring that to the board for discussion. Instead, I said, well, there are 3 of about 10 areas that I think makes sense for us to sign on to be part of. And this is really me as superintendent, because one of my big concerns here is as important as this effort is to cooperate, we have a serious bandwidth issue. Because any minute, for example, I'm spending on this regional effort that may go nowhere, we hope it would, is one less minute spent focused on Hastings directly. So clearly with our principals, assistant principals, Maureen, Melissa, Jean, all the rest, I isolated it down to me. So the one area where I will lean in to be part of it is new administrator mentoring and leadership. How can we develop ways in the region to better support new administrators, to mentor and support them? Second area, which I agreed to, was a coordinating group, be part of the superintendent coordinating group, stay in, which may give flexibility to be part of other things. And the third area was working collaboratively to establish a network in the hard-to-hire areas. How could we partner with area colleges and universities in some collective way to increase the pool of talented teachers on all the hard-to-hire areas? So those are the areas where I have signed on behalf of the district to be part of. I'll keep updating you. Next meeting, when we have a little more time, I'll give you the list of all the other areas and some rationales why, at least for now, did not sign on to those. But the ability to get involved later is that one where I mentioned staying as part of the coordinating group. So, in sum, trying to work regionally on administrator mentoring and trying to work regionally on the pipeline of teachers of high quality in all areas, diverse, et cetera, into here in Hastings, and those both match priorities for us.
I guess just to clarify for trustees and also anyone at home, the other key aspect here is you identified those 3 areas as most sort of substantive for the district to be involved in. That doesn't preclude us from widening that list in the future, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And what I'll do at an upcoming meeting with a little short note ahead of time is list and headlines all of those other areas highlighting these 3. And I think you'll understand the logic of these. But again, in sum, it's important, and also I'm being highly cautious about time spent on a regional piece that means well but may go nowhere. And so.
Any questions or comments from trustees? Recursi?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, was there any documentation or anything I could take a look at beforehand, just,
I can't hear what you're saying, Dave.
I was just going to ask Jody if there was any documentation or presentations that were made to the group or email, anything that's public that I could take a look at?
Yeah, I had promised the board over the weekend I'd have something in writing
All right.
tonight. It's been a little busy, so I've not, so you get my words, but there is ample amount of both websites, digital, plus other things I can share. So I'll do that. I'll follow.
Thank you.
Maureen?
I had just a question on the hard to find hires. Was that retention? I thought I had read somewhere that it was a broader kind of retention and search, right? Candidate search, and could that also be including candidates of color, and kind of groups that we wanted to target, and kind of really zooming in on either college connections or other connections that could make that happen?
Yes, definitely. It's my language, but it's those hard to hire, high skill areas, high talent areas. So it would be diversity in that full sense of that term, certainly faculty of color, administrators of color, substantively, special ed, substantively the sciences, substantively, you go right down the list. We're in a supply challenge problem as it goes to getting talent. So this one seemed automatic. It also relates to a very strong idea we've had for a bit of partnering with at least the riverfront districts and others on us. So this allows us to have a structure to go after that, to partner with universities and colleges. So yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? All right, thank you. Moving on to a report from our business official, Maureen Caraballo.
Thank you. So I'm going to keep my comments brief, as the majority of my report tonight will be with Bill with our budget overview. But I just wanted to give a very brief update. As you all know, the Farragut Wing did in fact open this week, and students are now and teachers are using the top 2 floors of the Farragut Wing. The classrooms and all the spaces look exceptional, and the staff, our staff, both our buildings and grounds staff and all of our teaching staff, they did an outstanding job decorating and preparing the rooms for students. It really, actually, they looked great, but then once people kind of put their touches on things, it was really amazing what they were able to do in a day before receiving students. The lower floor of the wing remains under construction and is still in progress. We had our weekly meeting today, and we're reviewing any open items and areas so that we're planning to get the punch list ready for downstairs in around the February break. So we kind of know the areas in which need to still be addressed. So I think we're doing really good in terms of keeping on that schedule too, of that returning after February break, and that wing being available to us as well. And then some of the other things we're still working on is lockers and the amount that we actually need to replace. And currently there's no lockers in the hallways, and we are trying to consider ways to not have them on both sides, because that's been a challenge for us with crowding and stuff in the
Looks
hallways.
nice without the lockers.
It does look much nicer without the lockers, but just practically speaking, we know that they need a certain amount. The teachers for just even book bags and their coats and things. So we're kind of right now they're carrying them with them into the 5th grade classrooms, and the 6th graders do have lockers that they're currently using. So just ultimately, though, I think we believe there may be an ability to kind of reduce not put back as many as were removed, because there are other locations that in the building that the lockers weren't being used, and we're also going to be adding lockers to the bottom floor. So to try to space out to,
good
again,
idea.
and primarily the 5th grade hallway, there was a lot of congestion issues there. So just trying to, we had somebody come in and take a look, and we'll be coming back with a proposal for that. And then I just wanted to provide just a little update on the snow removal and grounds update for this latest snowstorm we endured. So first and foremost, I want to start off by thanking our buildings and grounds department for their extensive efforts during the Sunday, which started Sunday and ran into Monday for them, Sunday and Monday. The crew worked long hours to ensure that the school grounds were cleared and safe for students and staff. These efforts are definitely challenging because not only, I mean, obviously challenging for everybody, but they are down a truck, which one of our trucks went offline a couple years ago, so they are down one larger vehicle, plow vehicle. In addition, so when you have this level of snowstorm, we borrow equipment from the village because you just need larger type equipment beside plows to move it. And to, you know, there were some areas where we were unable to move the snow to kind of create better parking conditions around the school and all the rest, but they did. The village is always very gracious with us, and they did lend us some equipment, but of course, they need it as well right now. So, you know, those are just logistical things that obviously I'm not suggesting we go out and buy equipment, but I think that's where sometimes when we have either delay or closures, even if your street looks okay, there may be other things such as parking and busing and, you know, vehicular traffic that we have to consider that goes beyond just if, you know, around Farragut looks relatively clear. Like as an example, today we had significant snow volume and it created a tremendous amount of parking challenges for staff because they use the pool parking lot to dump snow. And that's also, as we know, we use the pool for about 20 of our staff to 30 park there every day. They rely on that parking. That was not available. There was not a lot of parking available around this building. Same with the Farragut because both School Street and Mount Hope, there was snow piles there, but we were able to let our staff park in the playground. But that also, you have to have staff out there directing traffic. There's definitely things that create, you know, and now in retrospect, maybe we would have thought about that earlier and maybe directed people to it. You know, Bill and I just reflected very shortly today because we're busy with other things about like having a debrief and working with the town. And then I know I'll let you go, Bill. And then
I can add to that
go ahead.
topic.
Yeah, and we did call the police. I just want to thank the police because we called them at the last minute because we had a lot of traffic. It was a one lane coming in and out of Laferte. We had buses stop, parents. I mean, it was a nightmare. And they're short because I actually came in when I drove in today. There was there were accidents even coming into Hastings like 9 o'clock in the morning, like right on Broadway, because I think there were still patches of ice or just the way people drive, you know. So in fairness to the police, they have other things that they're trying to manage beside our issues, you know.
Yeah,
so
Chief Dosen just called me on the snow, so that's why I stepped out.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow,
so he's very appreciative of how the school's doing everything it can. They did have some officers up here at dismissal at the end of the day. Tomorrow morning they can't because they have to be out helping DPW cover roads for clearage. And anyone who's driven the side roads know here, there's a lot of snow yet and a lot of car issues. 2-lane roads are 1 lane now. So what I'm saying to the board is we all have to be patient. Mother Nature's loomed large here in the last day or two. And I will set up and the chief just thought it would be a great idea for Mayor Drake, the chief, Maureen, me to sit down, maybe fire chief a little bit to talk about sort of next time Mother Nature lands on us, might we do anything differently? Unfortunately, right now, I'm not sure what we would do differently, just except to be patient with each other, and we're working the best we can.
Yeah, I mean, the only one thing, and not to say we would have, and every school, as I said to Bill, you know, even if, as we look at our river town, I know we're going to be brief here tonight, but looking at the river towns, you know, Ardsley has a huge parking lot. I mean, I go there for meetings during the day, and there's like 35 guest parking while they're fully in school. So I think, you know, we have different challenges here with parking around both of our facilities, which, you know, again, Chief was great today. They didn't even have the officers. We need it. We're desperate. We need people up here to help us because we don't have enough staff to, you know, send out there, and then we left our security. So, I mean, we'll manage it in the morning, but we had, you know, some I would say helpful recommendations from neighbors that also live around the school and had seen a lot of it. And, you know, that I don't, as I said, there's a lot of it that they're also seeing things, and we want to make sure that, you know, the safety of our students and all the rest. So, yeah, so just be patient. And there may be a time that if we had something like this again, maybe we would even close, or because that would have helped us and the village not have to worry about us being in. We had people park where they could have cleared more snow in Lafergie. They were unable to do so because we had staff parking in certain places, which limited their ability to get rid of the snow, meaning the DPW, because obviously, you know, our staff isn't going to park like at the train station, you know.
Yeah.
So it does cause even issues with their ability to clean up when we have people here. So I think we do, if we ever had something of level of this event again, I may have said if we talked to them, should we close, would that help you to do your efforts without additional bringing an additional 350 people into
Yeah.
the village, you know?
You mentioned parking on the playground. Will that continue through this week just to alleviate?
Well, the
some of
middle school will, you know,
Yeah.
but as an example here, you know, a lot of times when we're doing the blocking fire lanes, Dave, close your ears, as a volunteer no, but I'm saying honestly, we can't, I mean, today we just reacted, but there are things, like if there was an emergency up here and an ambulance or a fire truck had to get in here, us blocking up the fire lane, like parking in the evening is one thing, but when this building is fully occupied, we cannot be parking people in that blacktop area. That is a fire lane to get around the side of the building. And parking, you know, 25 cars deep, that's not a good, it's hazardous. We're not supposed to park in the fire lane, you know?
Yeah.
It's not, I think today they made, I'm not saying that they were loading that up, but they did have to use some of it, and I think we need to find alternatives because that's not safe. Whether it be, I mean, I don't think we'll get something of this nature, but honestly, like we have struggled even with lesser snow with these same issues.
Okay, it's a good stress test.
Parking
then.
and things like that become an issue. So
Okay.
I just, again, first and foremost, want to thank everybody, including the village and the police. They do a stellar job here, and we're very appreciative of all the work that they have done. So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That's it.
Any questions or comments from trustees? Nope. Thank you. We're going to move on to a report from Dr. Szymanski.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to provide an update on the Cherry Beckert Diversity and Inclusion Audit and where we were on our progress based on the different indicators that we said were action items for the district. So it is a matter of public record. It's in board docs. I won't belabor the entire document. I'll just skip to the progress update, and that's in the right-hand column. So with number 1, governance and oversight, the board will be considering the position over the next month, the diversity and inclusion coordinator, and as an initial part of budget deliberations, making decision whether or not that should be considered an administrative position. So that's number 1. Number 2, in progress, the current strategic plan was reviewed alongside the roles and responsibilities of the diversity and inclusion coordinator. The 3 audits that we had, the Cherry Beckert audit, the IWG review, and also the Tri-State Consortium visit focused on diversity and inclusion, were referenced as key documents. And so new indicators for a 3-year strategic plan were drawn from consolidating and coordinating those 3 pieces of very important feedback for a new strategic plan. And now Dr. Mateo Toledo is developing some draft action plans for each of those, and that will then come back to me. We'll work on that together and we'll finalize that. So that is well underway, and we do have a new set of indicators ready to go. Number 3, resolve. The district has evaluated the recommendation following ongoing discussions with the Hastings leadership team and discussion with regional districts. Topics explored with regional colleagues included the extent to which this practice of having anonymous alerts is currently being implemented throughout the region, associated pros and cons, and implications for students, families, and faculty members. The districts decided not to implement an anonymous reporting line, but rather to strengthen internal processes and communication structures. And so some immediate moves we made is strengthening our reporting of the local incidents and also a feedback loop to families, because we want to make sure that we're being transparent, we're engendering trust, people see that things are happening, because that in turn will encourage the reporting process. Number 4, training and awareness, resolved. Enhanced learning opportunities focused on ENL training have been designed and will be offered during the upcoming March Superintendent's Conference Days. While faculty participants will have a choice in selecting their workshop to ensure a differentiated approach based on where teachers are teaching, what their assignments are, participation in the training will be required. And that was a piece of feedback that we received, that it should not be optional, it should be required. And so that will be happening. And I did indicate some focus areas that we have on the agenda. And I want to thank the Professional Learning Committee for working together on that, and Dr. Janice Mateo Toledo as well. So technology integration, supporting EL's vocabulary routines, performance-based learning and assessments, and student engagement. So those are the 4 different areas to support our English language learners and multi-language learners. Number 5, resolved. Data review cycle has been established, publicly presented, and is being implemented. The Diversity Committee is also currently exploring the opportunity to serve as a data team to regularly review disaggregated performance data. Number 6 is resolved. In partnership with Janice Mateo Toledo, the Race Matters Committee reviewed its funding allocations and determined that existing funding that comes from that budget pot can be reallocated to curriculum-related instructional initiatives. And so opportunities for grants continue to be explored, but we do now have some offset for professional learning in diversity and inclusion efforts through our Race Matters Committee. Number 7, resolved. The policy committee has spoken to that in the past, but again, I'll just refresh. So we've reviewed policy 4326, instruction for English language learners, ensured alignment with best practices, regulatory requirements, and the district's strategic goals. So New York State is joining the WIDA consortium, and that's an important shift that will impact our English language learners, and any future revisions to the policy will be taking those changes into consideration. So that was happening midstream as the policy committee was reviewing that. Number 8, human capital, education, and experience, resolved, but also continuously ongoing. So an internal review of the languages currently spoken by members of our faculty have been conducted. It's proven really helpful and also really interesting to support translation services and support for students. We have many languages spoken in our district, so that was really wonderful to uncover. The district is maintaining a focus on recruiting diverse and multilingual staff and continues to evaluate the effectiveness and cost efficiency of external service providers on an ongoing basis. And then finally, number 9, resolved. The Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator created a central repository housing minutes and status reports from the Diversity Committee meeting, and this has been shared with the central office. We're trying to figure out how to best deploy that, whether it's on the website, whether it's via email, whether it's a shared Google Drive, but it is in compliance with the recommendations of number 9 at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Szymanski. Are there any questions or comments?
Thank you, and I do want to thank Dr. Janice Mateo Toledo. She and I have been very busy.
I
So
bet. It looks like it.
kudos to her.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to student report. Ella, you're on.
Okay, so for starters, tonight is the Science Research Symposium, where seniors will be presenting their projects to a panel of judges and their peers. So joined by research students from other schools, 3 winners will be announced per category by the end of the night. So our seniors do have a chance at winning some awards presented by our staff. So I wish them all good luck and cannot wait to hear the results tomorrow. This Saturday is Hastings Costello Day, where all our basketball teams will be playing Dobbs Ferry teams. So this is very big in terms of rivalries. So throughout the day, we'll be including junior varsity women's and men's basketball teams, as well as the varsity teams as well. So throughout the day, there will also be halftime games and contests, as well as raffles. So you are able to win things, and I also hope everyone attends to support, of course, our own basketball players. At the end of this week marks the start of Tech Week for Hastings High School 1X, so that's very exciting. Me and my friends are in fact part of the tech crew this year, so this is definitely new for me, and I hopefully will get the hang of it. So it's supposed to be really exciting, and I'm sure there will be a lot of laughs like there is every year. And so these will be shown next week on Thursday and Friday, which are the 5th and the 6th at 7. So in preparations for Cartagena, which is our Spanish classes trip to Colombia, Senor Lopez has a meeting scheduled for January 3rd, where he'll go over details based off the packing list, behavioral expectations, daily itinerary, school details, and more. And we are all certainly excited for this trip. We've been looking forward to this for
You're going?
months. Yes, I am. I'm very excited because we get to experience the culture as well as improve our Spanish skills.
Wow.
The Amnesty International Club are also meeting with club officers on February 3rd in regards to our annual charity slam. So this is also a very exciting event because we'll be joined by other clubs to support the charities in competition. So this meeting will include discussion of presentations, the planning on which charities each club will want to present, and how winners are decided. And this event also features activities, live music, food, and more. And it was a lot of fun last year, especially getting the parents to donate. And then, second to last, last week were auditions for the musical Grease, and many of us are still awaiting the cast list. After callbacks, some of us were requested to add additional videos in order to aid with the selection of who goes where. And so this is especially an exciting and nerve-wracking time for the seniors, because we of course want to create a community that our seniors created for us in welcoming us as freshmen or sophomores. And so now we want to give back to the freshmen and our underclassmen. So hopefully we can do that and create a family of cast members like we had for us. And then on the topic of seniors, we are now entering second semester, which notoriously second semester seniors are particularly unmotivated. So it's definitely going to be a struggle these next few months, especially with many fun activities coming up like prom, music festivals, and of course graduation. So hopefully we'll all push through and be able to make it to the end.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. It's exciting. And I guess also college acceptances are starting to roll in too, right? So
Yeah, definitely.
busy time. Ella, thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? No? We're open up for public comment. Please observe the 3-minute rule. Do we have anybody or? Welcome. Yeah, just grab that. You can take it out of the stand. Just make sure it's on. Just state your name. And you can,
Switch it on.
I think it's off.
Hello.
There we go. Perfect.
Already I fall at the first hurdle. Louise Mullen, 5 Zinser Way. I'm here as a parent and a public health advocate, and also a parent of 2 kids that play field sports in both middle school and high school. Anyway, I come to impart a bit of information that I think could be interesting to the board and the administration. I had the opportunity last week to meet with a bunch of people from Ardsley, and this is specifically in regards to the artificial turf situation. They're in a similar position where in Edgemont I think they're about to install artificial turf, and I know we like to do things in line with the other river towns. And I met those people through Beyond Plastics, which is a national level organisation. Essentially what happened was I had the pleasure of listening to someone called Kyla Bennett, who is a national expert in PFAS and environmental pollution and the effect of PFAS on health, amongst many other issues. She used to work for the EPA for many years, and now she works for more of an advocacy organisation. But basically, her job boils down to she's a fact witness. So she goes into court and testifies in federal cases and speaks to the facts about what these chemicals are. So she's not someone who's going to misrepresent opinion as fact. So a great source of information. Basically what she did was she took us through the testing processes of a lot of the artificial turf companies and the labs that they use to provide their testing results. And it was really interesting because she talked through the science of the whole process and in real time kind of dismantled a set of test results that were provided by one of the companies that actually I think are in the spectrum of people potentially that could provide the turf in Hastings, and was able to point out to us the problems with the testing process that they'd used, the fact that the test results were actually illegitimate because they tested in parts per billion as opposed to parts per trillion. So that's like testing at a concentration that is 1,000 times, less. Anyway, I won't get into the numbers because I can't really explain it, but it's not sensitive enough to pick up the PFAs. They didn't even test at a reasonable level for PFOA, which is a known carcinogen. So there are various reasons why she said we need to make sure that the independent testing that we do is through a reputable lab. And there are a number of labs that do this. For instance, one is called Eurofins, and it's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I called them actually, and they took me through the whole process. And I'm not a chemist, but I could understand most of what they were explaining was that you have to mimic the environmental conditions that the turf would actually be exposed to in order to do the testing properly and to get the right results. And I think the last point she made was that this question of, not reliable test results is now starting to be litigated in various communities because people are realizing they're not getting what they were promised by these companies. So I think just it's incumbent on us, the board, the administration, and the community to make sure that we're doing the right thing by kids, because clearly there are health hazards associated with PFAS or PFAs, whatever you want to call them. And we just want to try to adhere to the specs that were promised at the vote. So hopefully that information is of value. She did point out a website called Test the Turf. Okay, sorry, thank you. Testtheturf.org. It's really reliable, and it fully delineates what you should be looking for when getting independent testing. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on to the main presentation this evening. Our business official, Maureen Carballo, is going to give us the initial glimpse into... Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I thought. Yes.
No, come on up.
That's what
Sorry.
I thought. I was like, I think she's coming. I was so
No, it's
sorry.
okay. Just state your name.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey,
I think yeah.
speak into it, and then we'll say.
Is this on?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Hi, I think you all know me at this point. My name is Chloe Teasdale. I live at 8 Southgate Avenue. I have 2 kids in the district, a 5th grader and a 3rd grader. Both are avid sports fanatics, but baseball, soccer. My husband's a Little League coach. So we're going to be here for a long time. So we're very invested in the community. And you won't be surprised to learn that I'm here tonight to make sure that you as the Board of Education are up to date with the latest findings on artificial turf and the health of young athletes. So since all the vigorous debate last spring, which I really applaud the board and the district for supporting, you really gave people an opportunity to speak and be heard. I really, really appreciate that. But there is new findings, and you need to be aware of that, because as I understand it, your mission and your mandate is to protect the health of our kids, partly, right? Not all of it, but a big part of it. So the first study was actually a review of 42 published studies looking at, and I'm focused on injuries right now, okay? So this was a study done by researchers from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, and I'm reading notes just so I stay on time and I don't get anything wrong, that examined injuries in both collegiate and professional athletes. And they found the odds of ACL tears, which we all know are pretty terrible, were 63% higher on artificial turf compared to grass among NCAA Division II and III football players. They also found that female, and I've made this point before, it kind of got obscured by different aspects of the sort of focus on female athletes, which was really important, but female athletes are more at risk on artificial turf, and there is zero debate about that. There are conflicting findings with different sports and different sexes and different ages and positions played around injury on turf and grass, but there is no debate about female athletes and turf in terms of injuries. Now, we can talk about endocrine disruption and reproductive futures. That's a different issue. But this study found in a combined estimate that they had 18% higher ACL injury on artificial turf compared to grass. And that was across different sports. That wasn't just soccer. They noted the reason for higher injury on turf may be a result of higher rotational force and cleat surface traction differences. I am not a physicist. I am not an engineer. I can't tell you what those are, but that was their hypothesis. And I want to highlight one study that I think, I'm an epidemiologist, was really well done. And this was done by the National Football League. So this was using, well, it wasn't done by the National Football League, but it was using their data, their publicly available data. So from 2021 and 2022 seasons, the study compared incidence of lower extremity issues. So these are ACL and meniscus tears, ankle and hamstring strains, and calf injuries. So pretty serious injuries. Recorded in games played on 16 natural grass fields and 13 artificial turf fields. So the NFL is slowly moving away from artificial turf because the Players Union is not in support of it because of injury rates. And I would note that the authors make a very clear note that the artificial turf that they examined were the highest standard. So these are not old, this is not the Astrodome, okay? These are really good turf fields that are designed with players in mind. Okay, so one second. So the rate of injury was significantly higher on turf, 1.4 injuries per game. 83 out of the 368 injuries on artificial turf, 22% required surgery, mostly ACL repairs compared to 15% on grass. Compared to playing on grass, the odds of season-ending injury were 60% higher on artificial turf, taking into account weather, age, position, week played, and history of previous injury. So the authors noted that injuries start early, and they cited a 2021 study showing a 58% increased risk of injuries among high school athletes on turf versus grass. So in closing, because I'm out of time, you really need to take this into consideration. I know we passed bond proposal 3, but this is a danger to our students for multiple reasons. This is just one aspect of it, and I'm really concerned as a parent that my kids who are crazy for sports are going to be playing on fields that are really dangerous for them, unnecessarily.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Moving on to the main presentation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we're going to start.
Yeah, of course, yep.
To the main presentation this evening, which is the initial look at the budget for 26-27.
Yep.
Yeah, so Maureen's going to carry us through the details. I just want to do a few overarching points just to frame this. This is the standard introduction, the highest level look at where we are on the budget. Great detail will follow, as Maureen will discuss when we get to the calendar, but this is the overview. It's standard. So there are about 9 pages here. The detail later gets into hundreds and hundreds of pages. But we have been listening, and what we'll frame here, one, is we're recommending we stay within the budget cap if at all possible, but that's going to mean some very difficult decisions. Second, we are pleased that the board has reported to me their enthusiasm that for all of the settled contracts with the bargaining units and the unrepresented employees, you have been very strong for them. You've been very strong for them in terms of the financial aspects, the salary aspects, but also on the benefits. So for example, the cost share, we're at about 16 to 17% of our health coverage we pay out of pocket. That goes all the way across. Most of our area districts are north of that by about 4 or 5 percentage points. So that's a point of some real, I think, important support here. So it's a very strong set of financial commitments you have made as a board. We also understand that we have to stay flat at the FTE level. Personnel is our most expensive and most important area in schooling, but it's an area that we understand we have to stay flat. So if there will be increases or adjustments, we've got to look for similar subtractions. We also understand from listening to the board that it's a time to be conservative in terms of the out years. Bond payments are beginning to come due soon, which puts pressure on our taxpayers. So we have to be very sensitive to that. Other revenue sources that we've been hoping for may or may not be there in the village, but we have an eye on that. Now, lastly, in the midst of this, there is good news, which we will dig into more in detail later when all the details come out, but Maureen will speak to this in a second. We stand by our special ed students, and their individual needs mean that that will be an area of growth in the budget. And we will talk to you about that, particularly in great detail when we get to the instructional budget. But we're a district that cares about doing best by all our students and also our special ed students. They have individual needs that do drive certain things in our budget decisions. Also, professional learning and support for our administrators and teachers matters, so we will increase there. We will recognize the requests from administrators and the recommendations we bring to you. You'll make the final decision. But I just wanted to flag those broad areas right now, and I'll turn it to Maureen for details. But please remember, this is an overview. We're going to now spend the next couple months digging in with you into detail on this budget recommendation. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, as Bill said, we started to do this the last few years prior to our what I will call our more formal budget presentations, and at that point you'll be seeing a presentation that closes the gap that I'm going to be presenting tonight with our, so the number you see tonight will be different by the time we come back to you in February. And as Bill said, at that point, the February-March meetings are really used to go into that greater line-by-line detail, programmatics, really speaking about programs. Even sometimes whether there's a change in FTE or not, there's things in which our building principals and directors will be reporting on, or how they're allocating different funds, maybe slightly different each year, and be able to highlight the things that that they're offering next year. So we'll be looking forward to that. Again, this is just an overview of things we're going to review very quickly tonight, starting with the tax cap calculation. Each year we put this, we use these presentations also, we build this into our budget button on our website, and it's good because I think, although maybe not everyone may be interested in this calculation, it just kind of gives you the different inputs and outputs to how those calculations are determined. And again, it's all of the line items here are prescribed by the New York State Office of the State Controller, and some of them are unique to Hastings. Others are the CPI growth, which the last few years, because of inflation, has been 2%. But the amount above 2% is Hastings specific number, which is tagged to what they call the real growth factor of the village. And as you can see at the end of this calculation, our tax cap needs to be no more than 2.76% is the maximum amount that we can increase our tax levy next year. I just want to mention, by contrast, last year was about 1% higher than that. So this year, in total dollars, we can levy an additional almost $4 million, God bless you, worth of local tax dollars. And last year that was closer to a little bit below $2 million. So again, we started off with higher costs and less money that we're able to levy. And as you can see on the current tax cap on the very last line there, this really represents where we currently are at with our current, where we currently are with our internal budget document we're working on. Currently, we're about $700,000 above that number in what would be needed. And we'll get into detail.
Just to clarify, the currently set expenditure is about $700,000 above revenue.
Well, the budget to budget growth is about $3 million, and we're only allowed to increase $1.3 million. The other difference is, I just want to go through it. If we had no other increases in other revenues, that differential would be much greater. And we'll go highlight that a bit when we look at the budget overview slide. So the good news, which we want to stay positive, as Bill started off today, which it is. This is, again, we've seen that number in the past years to be much, much larger than that. So I think we're feeling okay, and that we'll get there. The governor, the last few years in particular, our state aid number has significantly increased. I mean, I have to go back 3 or 4 years ago, we were getting about $7 million, and we're closer to almost receiving closer to $9 million scheduled for next year. So the last few years, the state really has stepped up their commitment to public education. We're very appreciative of that. Hastings, in this year's budget proposal thus far, is showing about a 5% increase in state aid that we'll receive for the 26-27 years. So again, we are very appreciative of the efforts there and the increases that we've been seeing the last couple of years. Looking at this is what I was alluding to as part of the draft overview, budget overview, and we will talk about each of these appropriation categories in greater detail. So some we'll address in the February meeting, and others we'll be doing in greater detail at the March meeting. But in terms of the total budget to budget growth, currently what we are working with is about $3 million worth of increase in our expenses year over year. And as you can see on the bottom half, as we were focusing first on the amount we're allowed to levy in property taxes, you can see there are other revenues such as state aid that we're seeing an increase in that help with that increase of expenditures. And again, I don't want to get into it too much this evening, but we are currently increasing our recommended appropriation from our appropriated fund balance, as well as retirement and tax certiorari reserves. And it'd be more appropriate at the February meeting, when we have the majority of the meeting dedicated to the budget that night, that we'll dig into those. Oh, sorry, I didn't advance the slide.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I'm sorry, yeah, which number is?
I'm talking about slide 5.
Okay.
Okay.
And which, when you said the use of reserves?
Yeah, so currently, this is where we currently stand in the budget, and we would still need $2 million of tax dollars to balance the current budget. And that's where we're coming out with that $700,000 slightly over cap. expressing right now is thus far, we have already made some recommendations to use a higher level of reserves and appropriated fund balance than we did currently for the 25-26 fiscal year. And when we have a more detailed presentation in February, I don't know if, you want to get into it this evening, but I wanted to kind of give you some thoughts of why we're comfortable with where we sit currently with the recommendations. We wouldn't put, right now what you see allocated, we're comfortable with those recommendations for increasing those, and we can talk about in greater detail when we look at where we currently are, or where we closed last year in terms of reserves, what we anticipate, we'll need for this year, and then why we're recommending it at the level we are for next year. But currently that still leaves about a $600,000 to $700,000 budget gap to close. And just some initial thoughts, and I'll just speak about state aid in particular. The governor's proposal that is received in January, which we got, I think January 20th, we received the initial state aid proposal that was included in the governor's budget. Historically, typically, usually, that number is always lower than what we end up receiving in the final state budget. The last few years, because I think this governor actually has put more money up front in the education spending, but as an example, last year, by the time the budget was finally settled, I think we received another 100,000 or so. So I think right now we're of course going to put in what the current projection is based upon her budget. We anticipate getting some more state revenues, which will then help us, close that funding gap. Just as one example.
I know we're not going to get into it deeply tonight, but is it accurate to say what's reflected on slide 5? It's about $2.5 million of reserves that are being added to the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Compared to, this year we were using about, about close to 2 million also, but this would be another. And again, we'll speak to what we had last year. So as part of our more detailed budget process, what we typically do is we look at where the reserves were 6/30 at the end of our fiscal year. We look at what we potentially think we may save in this year's budget, how that adds into the equation, and then as we think about what we're appropriating, we can say, okay, what does that mean then in future budget years? So,
relatedly, and again, we don't have to get into it deeply tonight. From last year's budget,
yep.
Have we been able to add anything to any of the reserves?
Well, at the end of 6/30 for the end of this fiscal year, or for the end of last fiscal year?
Last fiscal year.
Oh yeah, last fiscal year we were able to replenish or put some money back into individual reserves.
And the outlook for this fiscal, I know it's not.
Well, the outlook for this fiscal year was that we would end at a lower overall fund balance, or in a little bit less than where we ended last year. But again, I'll speak about the reserves. Retirement reserves, the reason they were allowed or were established in the first place was you really are to use them in years where you're, it's to help you kind of manage your taxes, because the tax cap is so restrictive that the benefit of having reserves is that there's some years, as I mentioned last year, although we did use reserves as well, we were able to levy 1% higher, or approximately. But when you have years where it's lower, you usually see you use more reserves. So just like if we had a 4%, let's pretend like we had some of our neighboring districts do have a 4% cap this year or higher. We've had that. In years such as that, you may say we don't need to use the fund balance. So the idea of the reserves and fund balance, it helps you help those ebbs and flows of the tax cap and your own expenses. Certainly we've talked a lot about health insurance, although I don't know if that'll be going away anytime soon, but the reserves are helpful in years in which we're looking at a lower tax cap number, that's why it would be typical that you would see an increase of recommendation of use of reserves. So, but again, we do have to be there's, even if you had more, like if you use too much in one given year, you end up creating other issues. So it is definitely, you have to be very careful. I say that like I'm comfortable where we are right now. I think we want to be very cautious about appropriating any additional money, and if so, be, a little bit, not not the whole difference right now. But like, as I said, I think right now we anticipate getting a little bit more in state aid, just as one example. And I'll briefly touch on some of the expenditure areas we're digging more into when we kind of go over what our anticipated enrollments are, just as an example, to kind of speak to, not in great detail, but just examples of areas where we may find some savings. Going to slide 6, as we think about what the budget challenges are, and this is really just a very high level snapshot of where our significant budget increases fall into. And obviously there's some ins and outs in all of these numbers, but the story is the same as it was last year, and same with every district. Primarily the last few years in particular, the cost of health insurance has been significant for us. The last 3 years, it's gone up about almost close to now 30% in 3 years' time. Prior to that, 4 years ago, I think it only increased about 3 or 4%. That's a big difference on an $8.5 million number, going up 10% versus 3%. So, that we started off, and as I was sharing with some of our admin team today, that number could even arguably go higher, because that's based upon who currently has health insurance here. That number is based upon, there's many employees, like myself, who don't take the health insurance, or others who may need it next year, and things change. So this is based upon exactly who has it right now. And then, like as an example, because adults under the age of 26, they're on their parents. So many of our teachers, if once they turn 26, now they need our help. So that number could arguably be a little bit higher. So, we're early enough where we'll just have to continue to make adjustments where we see fit. But that 800,000 really is based upon the current level of health insurance that we are paying out this year. Retirement systems, we'll get into greater detail when we do the line by line items, so you can see the breakout. This is a net number. Actually, we're seeing a reduction in our payment to the teachers' retirement system, because that percentage has leveled off. We are now seeing an increase in the payments to the employee retirement system, which is the non-teaching staff. And that partly is because those rates are higher. But then also, we had a good amount of increase of non-instructional staff this year, which is pushing that number. One of the other things I think we are starting to see a little bit of breakage there is the state had changed and added a couple new tiers to the pension system, right? So that we are starting to see a little bit of, I think that's helping offset some of the needed increases. And I mean, that's what's being reported to us by the systems too. So what that means is people who are 10 years or less, or maybe just slightly over 10 years in the system, their pension benefit is going to be a lot different than people who are in the system longer. Like I'm tier 4, and those tiers, as they got on, the benefits and what we have to pay in for those employees is significantly less. So a new employee in the district, not only their salary less, but the pension, that the percentage we have to pay on their salary to the state helps soften that rate. So I say all these things, that this is not only about this year, but it's about that 5-year. It's about, as we look forward, not only for our district, but in the state, we are starting to see some help with some of those changes, although I don't agree with the fact they created tier 6. It does certainly, it is helping with some of those pension costs. Step and salary increase, I'll just speak to this really quickly. We'll get into really great line-by-line details so you understand it better. With the retirement incentive we offered our employees a couple years ago that we paid out in a 2-year period, this is the first year we're seeing the full breakage of that, meaning we paid out to incentivize some very high paid people who are closer to retirement to enter into retirement, therefore replacing them with lower level staff. We did have to pay out those settlements, so that was part of our budget. This is the first year we're not paying any settlements out. We now have the full turnover of all those positions. In addition to, we have a few employees that have also submitted their retirement papers for next year. We anticipate we'll be hiring those people at a much or at a lower salary, which of course would be expected, not paying a brand new or a 5-year teacher what you pay a 30-year teacher. So you do get good budget savings on those. Just as a highlight, this number last year was over $1 million for us. And that was with lower salaries. So not only were we able to, as Bill first spoke about, settle all of our employee contracts that expired last year, which was great, and I think all our bargaining units are very happy and very appreciative of the support from the board in settling those contracts very fairly. So, we were able, in addition to providing higher staff increases, not reducing staff, actually adding staff. We added 4 FTEs last year, and our budget to budget, this number, had we not had retirees, would have been $1.3 million. I mean, that's how significant that impact is on that. So, what we had planned for, and that also helped us, again, have money available to settle all of our employee contracts, which we didn't have clarity on that last year at this time. So we're appreciative of that. Everything else you can see here, one of the things we'll highlight just on the bottom, with special ed, other than other things we will speak about that aren't included in the budget, maybe proposals that were brought forth or some ideas that people would love to see added. Special ed is different because it's driven on individual student need and programming for them. So the current budget proposal, which includes the amount we're over, does include increase of 2 special ed teachers and about 5 support staff. And Jean Ferrugio will be here to really talk about the continuum of programming and really do it in a much more holistic way to explain from K to 12 what's being recommended, and it'll address our individual student needs and some things that they think will improve K through 12. So I think that'll be exciting when she's with us in March. But again, that is also baked into this. So we are including an increase of staffing within that $3 million increase. And then in addition to that, there are some students who are currently in district that we anticipate may need to be outplaced next year. And again, the cost of that was about $600,000. So that kind of just breaks down at a very high level, the increase. And as Bill said, I think, we're in alignment with the board that there's always going to be things and the reserves, and we understand the tax cap, and we understand that we just passed a bond, and we do understand that we need to be able for people to not overtax people or tax people out of here best we can. So we are committed to bringing in the budget at that 2.76 tax levy. Even if it were to be a little bit higher, I think we understand, we feel very comfortable that now with the settled contracts, and we have some ideas about how to tighten up, which looks like a lot of money, but I think I'm confident we'll get there. It will be not, there will be some people that maybe things that they would like to see are little tightenings up here and there, but I think we understand the charge there, and as I mentioned here, we feel comfortable that all of our extracurriculars and things that we're able to offer, we're not looking to cut those and all the rest. We just have some ideas about how we'll get there. Just, taking a snapshot, looking at our enrollment, and we had a conversation today at Hillside. It's not really reflected in here, and we'll get into that in greater detail, but, we had spoken about, right now we anticipate level sections at Hillside. The only difference is, and Jean will speak to it when she presents the budget, there is a recommendation to establish a K1 1211 class, and she'll speak to how that will impact some of the enrollment numbers at K in first grade. And, we had talked about, we'll be, as we always do, keeping a very watchful eye at our incoming kindergarten enrollment. And, whether we don't think we'll have to increase sections, the question would be, could we potentially be down a section? I think right now it's more than likely that we anticipate we'll need the exact amount of sections that we had this year at Hillside. So just to stay consistent with what has been community expectations for class size. And then Farragut Middle School is a little bit different. This is one of the areas that we'll be watching very closely. The incoming 5th grade is what I would call significantly smaller than the current 5th grade. So we are currently contemplating, if it were to stay at that 110 to 113, 114 number, even if it were to grow to 118, our recommendation would be to run 5 sections next year. So again, these are just enrollment driven. if our budget even were to have not have that 600,000 differential, we typically don't run classes at the middle school that are sub 20. I mean, that's not, we would typically make that recommendation anyway. So we'll be keeping our eye on that. And then again, at the high school, as you can see, the enrollment's slightly up there. Next year, we anticipate a slightly higher enrollment. A little bit of a smaller ninth grade class, which typically helps because ninth graders take all the subjects. It's when a higher senior class is almost easier to manage because at that point they've made most of their requirements. But overall, I think we're not anticipating, we feel comfortable with the level of staffing that's recommended there. And as I had mentioned earlier, Jean Ferrugio, we just put this as a separate slide again for the record. Again, highlights what I just spoke to about some of the increases in FTE that are included in the current budget proposal. And as I had mentioned, they're just highlights, and not only are they based on individual student need, there's a lot of programming and a lot of positives that Jean will break down, that even with some of the FTE increases, they're able to accomplish a lot of improvements, I think, at every building, and there's a lot there. And I just try to capture some of it on the slide, but I think, for just today, you can kind of look at it, and then Jean will speak to it in more detail, because it's really very, very thorough. Now, I had mentioned, so this slide 12 and 13 are the exact same slides, and I kept them in here purposefully, and we will be bringing to you at our next budget proposal the updated ones that reflect where our current budget has landed. And the reason I went back and forth about updating it before this meeting, but the reason really for that is the modeling really does work. And if we look at the one even the year before, really where you end up in the budget, and as we can see at this time last year for the 25-26 budget, we were ranging between 62,500,000 up to about a high of 63,400,000, and we in fact came in right at that. And that's just based upon if you put in certain increases, if your staffing is relatively flat and you just have increases of contractual increases and health insurance, which is the main drivers, and some other inflationary things, and you plug it in, it really does. There's not a huge mystery to it, unless, in this case, there are some ins and outs with retirements, as I had mentioned, and then, which really helped offset some of the increases of staff that we're proposing. But as you can see, the projections really show the budget growth. And if we look at those out years, and that's why we're very much understand the charge that we need to, in years where we can kind of be a little tighter and be a little more efficient with our personnel allocation, the importance of how that builds out into future years. So again, we're going to speak about this in greater detail, and when we look at our budget calendar, you'll note there's like two larger budget presentations, one in February, one in mid-March, but we're going to have opportunities to really dig into reserve funding, how that's tied into it as we look at that 5-year projection, and then looking at how we're allocating those reserves. It's important to kind of do those together, because then it helps you feel more comfortable to say, well, if we're appropriating this much, what does that mean in those out years? And are we creating a financial cliff that's going to be too difficult to dig out of? So as I mentioned, I put this here more so to kind of say like the reliability of it, and then just kind of looking in the out years. If we use this as what typically happens, you can see where you start on slide 13, seeing those projections and what I would say like funding gaps that you start to see between the two slides, because the tax cap it's so difficult to just increase when your expenses are just going up so significantly, and then just being able to only increase that line at like a 2% or 3% when your expenses are growing at 4%. It becomes unsustainable after a while. So I think we though feel we have some things that we know we can tighten up, and we're optimistic we'll be able to close that gap. But it will be as important as we think about the 26-27 budget. If we don't really look at what the impact is in those out years with these projection models, as well as what we're allocating for reserves, it is irresponsible, right? Because you can't look at it, if you only look at it 1 year, like, yeah, that sounds great. But then if you have to kind of see, okay, if to your point, your question, Alex, how much money are we able to put back in the reserve go back, how much did we put back last year? What do you think you're going to put in this year? Then if we're going to continuously use that same amount, then what does that mean? So just how do we then see that some of other things that we may think that we'll be able to, find ways to, as we think about out years, how does that work? So that's always kind of the challenge, right? And I think sometimes it's good to know the out years, but there are times and we've done it here, sometimes we're we do know that, but right now for this year, we think it's really important to stay at tax cap. So not to kick the can, but what level are we comfortable allocating reserves? And then understanding the long-term impact of that. So, we'll have the opportunity to dig into that in greater detail. And as Bill said, as far as the budget calendar, I just wanted to highlight, we have the February 10th, which is, at that meeting, we'll be going into greater detail in every area other than the instructional budget. But that includes what I consider linked to instruction, like transportation, unassigned benefits, and all the rest, which is directly linked to staff. So, we'll get into greater detail of that evening. And then we have the 17th, which is the instructional budget, the detail on that. But between that, we have the March 3rd meeting, which I would anticipate there may be digging into the 5-year models. Again, we're going to talk about the budget, very specific line by line items. I think, we can definitely start that conversation on the 10th, but I think using that March 3rd meeting to get into looking at the 5-year projections, look at where we anticipate ending this fiscal year, how much money we're able to allocate to reserves this year. If we were to continue to use the same level of reserves in the next few, fiscal years, what does that mean? So I think I would suggest maybe using the 3rd, because I think then by the time you come into the instructional budget, you really are going to have a better understanding of the impact of every decision we're making now and how that'll play out, in the out years as well. The one thing we're always hoping for, is to get some of those breaks, like when the retirement system, even when that trends down a percentage or two, those are the times that kind of helps offset, that we've had years when we've been kind of on the uptrend, just having that little break this year. And if that, health insurance, I hope I don't know when, but, even if it comes down to a 7 or 8% increase, it would be really helpful in our budget process. But anyway, so just look at the budget calendar it does move pretty quickly because, as you know, the board does have to adopt a budget to put before your voters on April 21st. One of the other mentions I want, and I'll be bringing it, the recommendation on the February 10th, there's one capital project that it's not included in the budget document that we're considering. It's like a $300,000 air conditioning project. We're considering putting on the ballot as like a standalone outside the budget, like just an allocation from capital reserve.
Yeah.
So we'll speak to kind of some thoughts around like some smaller capital work we are, thinking about recommending as well. But that's it for this evening.
Okay. We're going to open up for questions or comments from trustees.
No, I don't have it.
No?
I was just tricking.
Is everyone,
Thank you,
is everyone
Maureen.
awake?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would
This is
say.
the first of many presentations.
Yeah.
and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just to echo that. Yeah, I anticipate getting deeper into this, but thank you so much for setting the table. This is a lot, and I appreciate everything you've done so far, and looking forward to working with you on this.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. I think that, I speak for myself that I really appreciate keeping it under the tax cap. I think that's important, especially with the additional tax burden of the bond. Not burden, but additional tax
Investment.
burden. Sure.
Of course.
I think the community really appreciates that, to not have to go down another debate on how much money the school should get. So, yeah, I appreciate all your work on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, no, thank you. And I think we agree because we know that you also, there is this a point, even if you were to recommend it, like we have to manage and we have to be, as everyone, it's like the village, it matters the sustainability of the village to us as well. Like, there's only so much dollars and we understood that going after the bond process that we would need to, this budget year, we would be looking to not grow our budget more than the natural budget growth.
Yeah, I would also echo the praise to Maureen. I think your judgment is impeccable we are kind of beneficiaries of just really great judgment and good calls and predictions, and I think you're excellent at planning. And I would also kind of encourage everyone to think about what efficiencies, even little efficiencies can add up. So, before you think about adding something or asking for something, look internally, manage what you have a little bit better, and all that can add up to savings. And I know you manage that way, but I'm saying to the entire district staff,
Yes.
everything counts. So thank you for keeping us under the cap.
Spoken from a true budget person.
Yeah, likewise with the kudos, certainly. I do have a question, though.
Sure, of course.
With the revenue shortfall on slide 13.
Yep.
I'm just going off the medium just because it's in the middle. Is there any structural reason why that curve sharpens so steeply? We go from $1 million shortfall to 2.5, 4, 5.5, 7.
Are you talking about just in the out year, the 26,
Yeah.
27? I mean, again, the projection thankfully is a little better. I think here I was only using, at the time, well, it only reflects the 2%, but then as you can see though with the, this year the modeling will be a little bit more predictable as far as the expenditure. So again, this was just, now it relates to what I reported last year, but except now we have settled contracts, so we have more understanding of like where our out years will be. But between those, a lot of it, that's tied to like different predictions of how large the budget will be. So you have a deficit. Is that what you're talking about? The deficit is linked to if the budget were at the highest level, like, things were more expensive than, is that what you're talking about? The out years, or you're talking about the individual year?
No, the out year, it just catches my eye.
I think also if you think about the out years, why it from year to, I didn't know if you were talking about within the same year.
No, across the years.
It's because we're assuming less revenues from appropriated fund balance.
Right, for example, for like on a
27, 28.
Yeah, like we have a $1 million projected shortfall for last year,
Okay,
right?
yes.
Which was 3% of the budget.
Yes.
But we go ahead a couple years and now we're talking about 8 to 10%.
Because if you look at it, we're assuming there's a point in which we're not going to have money to allocate out of appropriated fund balance.
Gotcha.
First of all, those numbers, we're already recommending more than this states for 26, 27. That's why the differential is different. Because again, this was just more to speak to it still kind of drives the point like that the expenses are just, that they just, the projections and with the tax
Yeah, we
cap,
can look
you're going to
into
have
it
those
more. I just
differentials.
wanted to get
But a
it.
lot of it is tied to allocations of fund balance. That's why they go up substantially, because as you can see, expenses are going up and then I'm allocating less revenue. So it makes those tax caps even so much larger, because the assumption is if we were not able to replenish, to your earlier question, then you'll have less to give in the future. So you're kind of using more on a smaller budget and then less on a larger budget, which then creates that larger deficit. That's why the management of it is the taxpayer's dollar. So it's two things. I think there's some districts that are like, they never want to give it up. I'm like, well, you saved it for the rainy day. It's raining, but you got to be careful not to use it in one year, because you may have multiple years of needing to allocate it and be smart, knowing you may not be able to replenish it at the same rate. So it's where you're trying to balance, reasonable allocations of it. But that being said, there are years we've had to dig a little deeper into it, and that's okay also, right? Because each district has different pressures. We've just passed a bond. We want to be mindful of trying to massage the tax rate, what I would call massage, kind of keep it so we're able to kind of manage the impact to our taxpayers, and we do have some money in reserves, and is it better to use it this year and then going into next year? I would anticipate the same thing, trying to manage it to help. As we have money, as an example, we have money in our debt service reserve. I'm not allocating out of it this year. I would make the recommendation the first year the bond comes online. I was going to make the recommendation to use some of it because you have new debt, and you could use it even now because we have debt now, but it's more as that new debt comes on, you want to soften, you want to try to manage the first couple of years of those larger dollars coming, because the debt is relatively steady, right? So those dollars in the first few years are much more impactful on tax rate than the out years. So you usually want to use the reserves to help soften the impact of that.
Yeah.
So that's all to say, I think we're comfortable where we are allocating it right now. We'll get into greater detail so that the board is comfortable with the recommendations, and we'll see where we finally end up with it. I wouldn't have put it there initially if I didn't feel comfortable with making that recommendation. We had hoped that the tax cap would be a little bit higher. We had hoped a little bit over 3%, but, we'll manage with what it is.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? All right, Maureen, thank you as always. Moving on to business items, are there any questions or comments regarding the business items 1 through 6? Is there a motion to approve business items 1 through 6? Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye? Aye. Thank you. Moving on to placement services for CSE and CPSE, are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve our placement and services for CSE and CPSE? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to personnel. As a consent agenda, are there any questions or comments regarding our appointments, amendments, or retirements?
Yeah, I think we should just, were you going to say something? Take note that Dr. Janice Mateo Toledo, it will be retiring at the end of July, and she's been a remarkably valuable member of our district. Not in the district as a teacher or staff member, the thing I always seem to associate her with is the book fair, which I love. And I just so appreciate that. I remember when she instituted that, and it's just such a mainstay now in this district. It's terrific.
Thank you, Jerry.
I'd just like to add, I have the opportunity to meet with Dr. Mateo Toledo weekly in her role of teacher on special assignment as the diversity inclusion coordinator. I also see her in her role as ENL coordinator. She comes regularly to chair council. She's in front publicly. She's working behind the scenes with teachers on lessons. She's working alongside administrators, planning professional learning. She was linked arms with me on the diversity audit that I just spoke about, and has been very hard at work in all of those different areas. And I will say that over the years, we've had some really stunningly interesting conversations and thinking about how to create change during difficult times, and thinking about how to best serve every single child in this district, and to make sure that we are also serving our faculties well, to ensure we're creating environments that are welcoming, where everyone is thriving. So I would just like to publicly recognize her partnership and her work on behalf of the district, and we still have a year ahead, but I would feel remiss not to say something about someone that I work so closely with and am grateful for.
Thank you. It's very kind. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve our personnel as a consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving on to approval of minutes. This would have been from the January 13th meeting. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve our minutes from the January 13th meeting? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to second read. We are voting on this. This is the policy we looked at in the last meeting, policy 5100 on student attendance. This was revised. And I want to thank the policy committee again for, it's a very busy committee, and particularly this year, and particularly effective. So thank you for taking the time and effort here. Are there any questions or comments regarding policy 5100? Is there a motion to approve policy 5100?
Do you want to say anything about the policy?
Yeah, I mean, I can, if anyone wants a refresher. This is my favorite. This is my favorite part. Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
For those unaware, policy 5100. This is the student attendance policy. I know this was something that was discussed among the community. Certainly, we did a lot of work on this and really focused on it. The big change here, and I think this is a good change, is that the superintendent may excuse up to 3 absences, tardiness, or early departures per school year for activities which demonstrate a clear connection to a college and/or career opportunity. So this is, really opening the door for families to be able to petition, for special cases to go up to the superintendent, which we think was a really good compromise for this, and which is why hopefully we can approve this. And then also, just to follow up, we had discussed in the last meeting, and I don't know if this had already happened, the rescinding.
You had voted on it then.
We already voted on that, right? All right, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore.
If I may, just underscore that there has been an immense amount of work on this policy prior to this revision, and particularly the late Dr. Lang had been very, very active in that. And I appreciated the policy committee really zeroing in on those somewhat new but lingering questions that have been brought to our attention. So I think David spoke to one adjustment. The other, though, is now the policy is explicit about if the absences are unexcused. Now, let me be clear, what David's speaking to is the board, if you adopt this, you are expanding the options for approvable excused absences. You're also modifying it so the principal has the lion's share of decision-making responsibility with that added flexibility for a select set of opportunities coming up to the superintendent. At least this superintendent will certainly consult with the building level principals, but that's the key. That's in essence almost a trade then to say with an expansion on what's excusable, now will be explicit that unexcused absences, there will not be obligation of providing backup work or support for students. And I think I know the teachers are supportive of that, the administrators, they appreciate the added generosity, and also, though, to say, please plan accordingly, families. We're very clear about our calendars, our dates, et cetera, so that you can help your child be in school at the right time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Christie. So is there a motion to approve policy 5100?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We're going to take a look at agenda review. So we're going to be into... Oh, I'm sorry. We're open up for a second public comment if anybody would like to make a comment. No? That's okay. Moving on to agenda review. So we're into February here. I believe it's February 10th. Is that right?
I might make one note. The work group regarding potential turf options, all of the bid requirements has been actively at work. And on the 10th, we'll be able to provide an update to you. And Alex has been very active in that group. Indeed, had a wrap-up meeting today to then be ready to bring to the board on the 10th of February. What are the elements at the real major ones of real points of concern going back to the spring, fast forwarding now. In a bid process, the board does not approve the bid. You approve the final choice, but this is an opportunity to know what are some key elements that would be in the bid, and we will definitely, in that update on the 10th, provide you insights on each of really what have been the key questions from you as a board, but also as you've been listening to the community in the full sense of what it would mean to have 2 artificial turf fields.
Thank you. And we'll also hear, as Maureen pointed out, the non-instructional budget as well.
It might be a busy meeting,
yeah,
but an important one.
Moving on to Board of Ed comments.
So I wanted to say just a couple things. Last weekend there was a memorial for Damaris, and I was not able to attend because of my shoulder surgery. But I know that several people attended, and I heard from people, and that it was incredibly moving.
I can't quite hear you, Jody.
That many people here attended, and that it was very moving, and it's just a wonderful and wonderfully sad moment. I mean, a wonderful that they could, that memorial for her was so moving for everybody and important. And then this morning I got a text from my son who was in Philadelphia running a conference that is strong focus on diversity and inclusion. And I was thinking about Damaris, and then he texted me telling me about it, the introduction in the morning that they had talked about how it was Holocaust Remembrance Day, which I didn't know that, but and that they did, they had a moment of silence, but they also then went on to talk about kind of the existential threat that so many of people, that we all, but some people more than others, but we all are facing, and how much people really need each other. And so I somehow felt like that was something that Damaris would have so grabbed onto. Anyway.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Is there a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And again, we're going to move into